Frontline workers keep our world moving. They work in high-stakes, fast-changing environments where technology can empower them or hold them back. And when adoption fails, the impact ripples outward, slowing teams, frustrating customers, and undermining the success of the entire organization. This is Frontline Innovators, and I'm your host, Justin Lake. In each episode, I speak with leaders who are rethinking how technology is introduced, embraced, and sustained on the front line. Leaders putting people at the heart of digital transformation. Frontline Innovators is brought to you by Skillful. We help organizations achieve lasting technology adoption for frontline teams so they can work smarter, safer, and with confidence in the tools they use every day. Okay, Frontline Innovators is back. I am so excited to be recording new episodes of Frontline Innovators after over a year where we haven't published a single one. I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Carlos Linares. Hello, and thank you for joining Frontline Innovators today. So happy that you're here and that we got a chance to connect on social media before today. Tell us about your background and what you've been up to.
Hey, Justin, pleasure to see you again. And thank you so much for the invitation. So happy to be here with you.
That's good. Let me introduce, if I can, I kind of skipped over. I'm a little bit rusty on my introductions here. I skipped over introducing you with your actual titles. Let me do that real quickly, and then maybe you can kind of back into that and give us a little bit more detail about that. So first of all, you are the founder and CEO of FoodOpsIQ, and you are also the CEO of Third Wish Food Services. These are two exciting technology companies that I'm dying to learn more about, and I'm sure our audience is too. So why don't you fill us in on what you've been up to these days?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, so FoodOpsIQ, it's, I created this startup company, and we've just been working on the last few months to kind of bring to, food service, contract catering, facilities management companies, an operational excellence view linked to their business strategy. And sometimes I've seen, so many years working on the food service industry and retail, that disconnection. So as a CEO, and what I've been working is having an array of tech solutions that can bring and bridge that gap.
That's
And
amazing.
with Third Wish Food Services, this is a company that we are basically operating in the U.S., but we are also developing the European and Latin markets. Again, this is a new company, and we identify a niche where there's many companies providing AI solutions, but no one with the kind of expertise and focus on food services. And we have so far very specific applications that are directly linked to what food services challenges and pain points are. And one is related to what we're going to talk today. We call it virtual OPEX, and it's about bringing operational excellence supported by artificial intelligence.
That's amazing. So I'm so excited to get into the specifics with you on the food service business. This obviously isn't your first foray into food services. What is your background in that segment that has prepared you to launch and lead these two organizations?
Well, I would say that, when I started my career in consulting and then in retail, grocery, and, things happen, and at the time, I was born and raised in Peru, but I studied in the US. I came back to Peru, working consulting and then grocery. But, things happen in life. And then I was suddenly working with one of the major, global contract catering companies in Peru. And from there, helping grow the Peruvian business 3X, I moved with my family to Brazil. I worked there for that same company over 6 years, then moved to a global role where I was, working across more than 45 countries in Europe, Asia, Latam, North America, of course. And then my responsibilities came to the US. And I've been, focused on the North American market, US and Canada for the last 10 years. And so it's been an amazing career having the opportunity to, work with people around the world, different cultures, different ways of looking at things. But I would say that throughout my career, I've done a lot of transformation involving technology, process, people, and what I learned, and this is something that kind of was growing through all these years, is the importance of the frontline teams to deliver the real value or deliver that transformation. And so it's been a journey and a very interesting one. And I would say that the way I see things today, they're completely different from when I started. I can tell you that.
That's interesting. Okay. And would you say that the perspective that's changed for you, is that changed because of your exposure to just a multitude of global markets? Or is that just that people have changed? Or is there something else that maybe I'm not picking up on?
I would say that, first of all, I realized that at the core, and this may be applicable to different companies and industries, at the core, the value is generated in the same way, and the market leakage, and then the loss of value it happens the same way in terms of how the company works and operates systems, processes, and people. But there's a big difference on the details, and when you get into the details and how specifically that specific country uh, and the ways of working of the teams and the market operates and the laws and how clients purchase, it's all different. So one of the first things that I kind of learn is you cannot have a one size fits all solution. You need to be open enough and to understand what's the real dynamics and different geographies. But when you land in the US, and that's what happened to me kind of 10 years ago, is like when you work in the US, you're working in like a multiple of countries, right? And for contract catering also, you are supporting, you are delivering services across a multiple of industries, right? And so all these differences, in terms of what is the culture, how is the people that work on that specific industry or that specific part of the country, that kind of shapes how things should be done, right? So I would say that was kind of a big learning, coming from a small country and getting into a global role, and then into a very diverse country like the U.S.
Yeah. When I talk to business leaders like you that have extensive global experience, it always makes me feel uh, so limited in my exposure because I've done most of the business that I've done here in the United States. What's something that might not be obvious to those of us who have spent most of our time here in the United States? What's something that is really different between some of the other countries that you've worked with and perhaps the experiences that you've had here in the United States?
Well, I think there's a lot written about it, but there are things that especially when you're living in different countries, right? Every time that I had to move, you have to reset everything. You have to learn everything, and the basics. Uh, what brand am I going to purchase? What detergent am I going to purchase? How does insurance works? How does taxes work? How does all the stuff that we take for granted that we've known for years? Everything changes, and then when you get to the office, things are different as well, right? I mean, I can tell you, even in Latin America, moving from Peru to Brazil, right? First, there's a language difference, Spanish, Portuguese. I remember being there schedule my first meeting with the executive senior leadership team, and I said I will meet at, I don't know, 11 a.m. So it was 11:10 and nobody was on the meeting. I said, "What's going on? They don't care about me." And then 11:15, and then people started arriving with the coffee, and then everybody was smiling and talking, having a lot of fun. I said, "Well, it's 11:20 and we haven't started the meeting, right?" So, but I mean, then you learn. I mean, it's not always like that, but it's the kind of thing that you cannot encounter. Uh,
Yeah.
and then you go to other countries, and then it's 11 a.m. and everybody's already sitting there and just waiting to start the meeting, and you're late, right? So that happened to me both ways.
Yeah.
So
That's really interesting. Well, I definitely think here in the US, we tend to follow a little bit more of a rigid schedule. So I can appreciate how different that must have felt as you transfer from one area to another. Let's shift the conversation to what we're here to talk about: frontline employees, the deskless workforce. Obviously, in and around the food and services business, there's the majority of that workforce are frontline team members that are moving product, selling, delivering, all those functions that are out on the front lines. You're spending a lot of time in your current practice now talking about what I always refer to as kind of that intersection between the physical world and the digital world, where those people are out actually doing jobs. And now, and we have been for a long time, but we're continuing to push more technology to the edge of that workforce. So tell me some of the things that you're seeing, perhaps some of the problems that you're witnessing that your technology and consulting practices are set up to help solve for.
absolutely. I mean, first of all, I see, I mean, margins are getting thinner, right? So there is, and then contract negotiations with clients are getting tougher. Uh, and, the, it's like clients are getting wiser and understanding how can, what are the pressure points and where they can take additional value. And um, so considering that, I think that in an industry where it's people heavy, you know, and depending on the frontline teams to deliver the service, um, you know, whatever you can do to make sure that the teams are the most efficient, that uh, they're able to get into their jobs and understanding their jobs the faster, uh, that's turning kind of a competitive advantage, right? I see, I mean, because not only margins getting thinner, and you got the clients pushing for savings and cost reductions and a more streamlined, contracts and ways of working, but you also have a very high turnover. And so you need to manage both. And we all know that a high turnover means cost. I mean, you are spending more money on training. You're not efficient. You're not able to deliver the productivity that's needed to make a good operation. So with that, uh, there are ways that you can leverage technology in order to empower the frontline employee and to make that adjustment, that learning faster, right? And that's something that I think this is the next thing in food service. It's just starting. And before, it was not possible because of technology was not there. And there's always been a gap. Uh, what the central teams have access to and what the frontline teams have access to. And I think we can disrupt that with AI tools and bring that, what used to take, probably a big, big effort from the central teams to be able to help or enable the frontline teams. I think that's going to completely change and be disrupted.
So something that's interesting when I hear you talk about the innovations specifically around AI, it sounds like you're talking about enabling people with better tools. Yet, what we hear a lot in the media right now and in politics as well is that AI is going to replace all these jobs. It sounds to me like you don't believe that it's going to replace these jobs. So I'd like to explore that a little bit more. Like, do you think that technology will replace certain jobs in the food service business? And then perhaps the follow on question to that is what jobs will be most protected for the longest period of time where it's just not practical or even desired to replace people with AI?
Well, in my view, I think it's going to be very difficult to replace the human touch and interaction that kind of differentiates contract catering, facilities management with other food service type of companies. And so I mean, the whole kind of thinking and how we're delivering these new products, technology products through the companies that I'm leading is how can we make it so easy for the frontline employees that they don't not only know what they have to do, but also they can receive advice, on time, real time, and 24/7 when they need it on how to either improve things or do new things or just remind them of things that they need to do or probably alert on potential risks. So I think the implications of bringing technology is not about replacing the frontline teams. It's about making them much, much better.
So I agree. I think you and I are of like minds on most of this, but I do think that there are some people. I was in a outside of a business context. I was in a personal conversation over the weekend, and I think the media is getting through to a lot of people, making them believe that AI has the potential to replace, you know, I'm being dramatic on purpose, but almost every role that's out there. And an example that was thrown out is, fast food drive-throughs are quickly being replaced by, and this doesn't even require AI, but just basic, mobile technology or kiosk technology where I can interact with a kiosk instead of an order taker, because that order taker is going to have a pretty good chance of getting something wrong with my order. Where at least if I do the order entry on my own on a mobile device or a kiosk, I can be certain that I've submitted the order to the kitchen. And so if that evolution continues down the path, then fast food locations may no longer need somebody manning the drive-through or manning the front counter, because we as consumers can just go process those orders on ourselves and probably get better outcomes. So, okay, I actually agree with that. In many cases, I don't think that there's much of a personal touch to be had there. But in more of a B2B ecosystem like what you come from, where those frontline employees are actually serving a business customer, what do you think is the future for them? Will they still be there serving customers, or will they be like the fast food chains that are largely going to move to automation and technology to replace those people?
Yeah, my thoughts is that on the when you look at the transactional process of taking an order or selling or operating a cashier, and this is something that we saw in the company that I was working with. Uh, you know, it's just exploding, right? Order kiosks. I mean, in contract catering, order kiosks, right? Purchasing through the app in advance and then going and pick up your food, right? Yes, I mean that of course, but I mean you still need, uh, but it's a big differentiator on the way that contract catering companies um, deliver their services is that human touch, the presence, and making a nice place that is impacting the workplace experience and then impacting the engagement on the teams. And so there has to be a balance. And I think, uh, in my view, that's not going to change. I mean, you can probably automate some of and take out some of the friction or some of the potential errors. And maybe there's people that, and we're seeing that they want convenience, yes, but they also want very good service. And if you look at the trends in terms of the brand development and guest experience in the workplace, students, patients, hospital workers or companies, the experience, it continues to be, extremely, extremely important for clients, for their students, their patients, or their workers. Because of that, I see that the importance of having, a trained staff that knows how to, take care of the customer and make that experience better. It's something that every company should strive for. And the other thing that I see is that uh, we can potentially. There's also opportunity for upselling. There's also opportunity for loyalty, retention. That's a big thing in contract catering. How you make sure that the people that are in the building, they're going to go through your restaurant and eat with you and don't go outside. There are a lot of elements that I think will continue to drive the need to have a personalized, experience and good service and that smile and people, serving you. And I don't think that's going to change. But what is the pain point for the contract operators is that, yes, we know that we need the team ready to serve in the best way possible to improve or maximize, the guest experience. The question is my team actually doing this?
Right.
And that's where I think comes AI to help that, on the preparation, during, and post service. And so, and then in between, and then other processes that are extremely important, right? And I can go on and on, but I don't get too detailed on this. But
No, I think this is good. Actually, what I'd like to explore is because I really do believe that the future of work is about people and technology continuing to work together. And I think to summarize what you just said is there are certain places where technology is the easy, right choice to get things done. Under margin compression, we want to be more efficient. We want to deliver more cost-effective solutions. There's a lot of ways to automate processes through technology. And where that makes sense, we should absolutely do that. You're also talking about the service experience side of things, and you describe it as largely a human-driven experience, right? And so it goes back to kind of what we talked about at the beginning, where there's this intersection between the things that happen in the physical world and those that happen mostly in the digital world. And it's the job of people like you and us to help make sure that those things can work together effectively. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective about, where you are seeing AI today help augment but not replace those men and women on the front lines. Like if, without sharing any proper names that you don't want to share, but if we give me a specific example of where AI is actually helping those humans do a better job at those things that they can do and not subject to potentially replacing them like the kiosk would at a fast food restaurant.
yeah, so I at this point I cannot get too much into specifics, but you can think about using like a generative AI tool where the frontline employee can access seamlessly. So one of the things is that now you can interact with a generative AI tool through voice, and the tool talks to you. And so if you can bring that level of interaction while you are delivering a service or preparing to do a service, whatever service it is, food, non-food, maintenance, repairs, preparing, you are about to cook. I think that's where things are going, and that's what we're working on through my company, and this is something that I will be able to share more in the next few weeks or
Okay.
months.
Well,
But
maybe
I
we'll have
think
to have you back on for another episode to tell us more.
I think that's for me the application. And just by telling you this, you can start thinking and imagine, wow, yes. What if you're ready to serve a custom, or you're ready to prepare something in the kitchen, and you want to pull what is the new recipe? There's a new recipe to prepare the lasagna. Okay, remind me of the new recipe for lasagna, and then you hear the recipe, and then okay, I got it. And then you can ask questions and have a conversation, and that makes you a better cook. And but also you're complying with what the company designing to be the best lasagna, to be able to deliver the desired guest experience on that menu item, but at the same time, but probably maximizing the efficiency on the cooking and the ingredients and the yields, reducing waste. So then if you start engineering that interaction, you can truly maximize, many, key levers of a company.
So I think that's actually a great example, and I want to pull on that thread a little bit. I'm going to be devil's advocate because on this podcast we're here to talk about technology adoption by the people that need to use the technology. And so even years before we were all talking about generative AI and chatbots and things like that, there was a problem with technology adoption on the front lines because people feared, the frontline team members feared, that the automation would eventually reduce or eliminate headcount in their role. And so I'm curious about your take on how we ensure adoption of technologies like what you just talked about, with a chef in the kitchen using AI to augment their role today. But given all the talk that there is about robotics and automation and AI, do you think that the adoption of that technology will be restricted because people fear like, well, man, if this thing starts working, if these chatbots start working, they're going to take over my job. And today it's the chatbot helping me prepare lasagna. Tomorrow it's going to be the robot just making the lasagna, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I no, it's a very good question. Back when I was working in Brazil, I had this idea of what if we bring a smart kitchen, okay, many years ago. And, in the way that the Brazilian market operates, the contract catering companies, they usually run a full P&L contract. By law, the employer has to provide food for the employees. So the contract catering, it's a vendor that is one of their highest SG&A costs. So they always want to reduce that cost, but I need to comply with the law, give you a good meal, but I want to contain that cost. Okay. So I had this idea: what if we design a kitchen that delivers the lowest total cost of producing a recipe? So, and that needs, of course, technology. And I mean, at the time, we were not talking about robotics, but we were talking about, state-of-the-art kitchen equipment, right?
So
Uh,
still with human operators.
yes, but
Okay.
reducing the team. So, I mean, first of all, why it works? Because we did it with the team live. So we didn't design on, we didn't build PowerPoints, or we didn't do it in a vacuum on an office. We put up a team with operations, the equipment, the equipment providers, key ingredient vendors, and operations, and the culinary team. And we work together on how to improve. The original, the original. I mean, and of course, we were looking to reduce labor costs, right? But by working with the operational teams, we identified that we could also we could leverage technology to reduce risk in the kitchen. So, can we take the knives out of the kitchen, for example? Can we reduce the temperature of the kitchen? And at the end, we were, I mean, the teams, they saw, I mean, they understood that there was going to be a reduction on workforce, but they were extremely supportive because they knew that that would give, they understood the value of putting a proposition like that to the market that will help the company grow. So there will be more positions for more people on different kitchens. And so they stop thinking about their own territory or kitchen and said, yeah, there's going to be opportunity for all of us. So we make sure that we took care of the team as we were growing. But what is important is that we reduce the total cost of delivering the food, but we also improve sustainability because we reduce consumption on water, gas, oil. We reduce the risks for the employees. We reduce the temperature, and we actually improve the frontline the kitchen staff engagement tremendously. They were so happy working in an environment that was high tech. Basically, the ovens, and they were fully maximized, and things were just easier for them to work on. So I would say that maybe in a different way, but I think if you do it with the operators, in mind, and what is important to them, there's a high probability that you're gonna win. It's gonna be a win-win for everyone.
Well, I'd like to explore this story because I think that's a great example. And I think what you just described, even though you didn't use this terminology, is the essence of an effective change management strategy, of being proactive about thinking about what's in it for them, clearly doing a good job of communicating those things to the people that were going to be impacted. I think that the part of your story I'm surprised about, but inspired and happily surprised, is that the team members embraced it the way that you described. And it makes me wonder, tell me about a little bit more about the communication that you had with them, because I think something you said at the beginning of your story was, separating their personal agenda, their selfish perspective on those things that might have been very focused on them, and kind of looking at the big picture. I think what I've witnessed in similar technology, innovations, that the people tend to they grasp onto their selfish views more than the big picture. So you guys must have done something that was particularly effective to help raise their view a little bit to look at the bigger picture. Can you think of anything specific that you did in that scenario?
Yeah, I would say it was the I mean, I just kind of seeing the teams we work, the faces that the team we work with, and just the smiles and but I would say that being with them, it's this is that I mean the understanding that this was not something that was engineered somewhere and then brought to them, right? And so I think that was for me the key, is that they were contributing, they were thinking, they were sharing. Yeah, this doesn't work. Yes, this work. And then the team reacting and listening, and then acting and changing, right? And with we did one control environment. We did a second one in the client, and we brought the sales team, got a big sales team, and we trained the sales team. They were in the kitchen, they saw it, and then the thing just exploded, and there was no issue. I mean, I think the good things, good stories, they travel, and we make sure that we got everybody on video. Everybody was talking. Everybody was sharing their experience, and we made a very powerful internal communication where there were not just numbers on a PowerPoint. I mean, we never showed numbers to the frontline team, which we just showed their teammates talking. You know,
That's interesting. That may be evidence of part of what you did that was so successful in helping them understand the team and the very human element of what you were doing, even though you were bringing new technology to the situation. It sounds to me that you were focusing more on the people impact. And as a result of that, you got better engagement with the people through that process. Would you say that going into that process, you had already established a culture of trust and transparency? Because it sounds to me that in many corporate environments, I think even with the tactics that you brought in to really bring this proof of concept to bear, had there not been a culture of transparency and trust leading into that, it would have been seen with skepticism. But it sounds like when you tell your story, that trust had already been established. Is that true?
yeah, I think that's a very 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 good point. And thinking about it, I mean, it is like you're in a new role. You're in charge of improving the performance or effectiveness of bringing that transformation. It cannot happen overnight. So yes, I can tell you, getting to that level of sophistication, right? You need to fix a lot of things. A lot of things need to happen beforehand, and one of them is that trust. I mean, yeah, I mean, the story is simple, but the transformation is deep. And in order to bring it to, I mean, from an idea to something that you make it happen in a controlled environment, to bring it to one client, and then to bring the sales team, and we put a brand, and then we start selling the concept. I mean, it requires a lot of trust. that
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I would say, yeah, there's a lot of work that has to be done, and I would say the culture was there because of previous work, but also we make sure that we were measuring everything from the stuff, and then sometimes you don't even think about it. I mean, and this is something that I have seen, is people thinking about bringing change, changing processes, or putting systems, and they don't even think about the baseline. Okay, where we're starting, right? And even after we deploy something, we're not thinking about, uh, somebody are they using the tool? Are they following the process? And so I think the pre work on defining how are you going to measure success? What is the current baseline? And then after you made the change, what's happening, right? It's something that people don't, I mean, usually don't think, or we should think more or get more, concerned about.
You're hitting a nerve with me on this topic. And so even though we've already gone over on time, I want to keep going on this because this to me is one of the biggest problems that I see with digital transformation. I don't even like that term because most of the time it's not that transformative. But what we're trying to do is transform as a business through the use of technology and people and process. But if there's no way to measure the outcomes that come from that, then we failed right from the beginning. Because I think exactly to your point, in order to measure what's changed, you have to first establish the baseline. And this is something that we see in our business. We've had customers that come online at Skillful and they've been a big champion of the solution. But when we sit down for a quarterly business review to evaluate the business impact, what we've realized is that our customers hadn't done a particularly good job of measuring the baseline. And so then when my team and I go back to that same client and we say, well, are we moving the needle in your business the way that you expected? It's a little bit of a deer in the headlights kind of scenario because they're not sure where they started from and where they were trying to get to. And that's a shame. So we are trying to sit down with our customers now. When we onboard a new client into our business, we're asking those questions right out of the gate. How will we know in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months that we've impacted your business? What would have to change? And if whatever KPIs they come back with, we say then, okay, what are those numbers now? So we have to understand what the delta is. What are we trying to go from and what are we trying to go to so that we can now have something that we can measure on a periodic basis. And so to hear you talk about that, it sounds obvious when we're having this conversation, but I agree with your assessment that more often than not, we kind of jump over the business metrics and we jump right into the technology piece and kind of forget that there was a business problem at our core that we were trying to change originally.
Yeah, especially on those projects that, take months or could take even years, right? I mean, if you're running, I don't know, 10,000, 15,000 site business, it's a multi-year project, right?
Yes.
To bring the change. But it's also important the second part, right? I mean, I've been in charge of functions. I mean, supporting operations where um, I was. I mean, a new system was deployed, and I say, we were we successful with the system? Oh yeah, we deployed 100% of the location. I said, okay, who's using the system? Oh, let me find out, and I'll send you the information. Then I receive the information. Okay, system usage. Okay, I mean, it's a bit low. These people that are using the system, are they following the process? Are they, logging in and interacting with the system the way we want them? And when you start asking those questions, sometimes systems are designed or configured in a way that they're not even capturing that information that are going to allow you to measure if you are successful on system usage, compliance, efficiency, and finally impact. And that's the four that I want to be, you know, close to 100%. And that's where, for me, the change happened and the system is deployed, right?
You're speaking my language. So we do need to wind this up, but I'd like to ask as my final question, it's kind of a two-part question. Why do you think business leaders often fall into the trap of not measuring the adoption and the overall effectiveness of their programs? And secondly, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give those same leaders to rethink how they go about measuring their innovation effectiveness?
Yeah, what I have seen is that I think when you are setting up a project or a program, that is a multi-million dollar. They're always, I mean, I've done so many ROIs and business cases and internal selling on big transformations. You're always going to get pushback to, reduce the scope. This is costing too much money. You need to cut. And usually change management, communications, KPIs, I will do that later, or it's not important, or we can take some money out of there. So I think that's my view, right? I mean, it's not that it's not there. It's not that it's not on the initial thinking, but as trying to get the project to be approved and to be deployed, we tend to prioritize on the core solution, and we forget the other important things that at the end they're going to enable the solution to be, adopted and worked. Right? My advice, I think, like I said before, and I had my errors, I made my mistakes, but I learned, and you have to design with operations in mind and with them. And you have to challenge the central teams, finance, on simplicity. I mean, you need to make things simpler. And at the center, we tend to overcomplicate things. And it's a challenge. If you're not thinking about simplicity, user experience, you're not going to deliver, right? So it's a combination of challenging yourself to bring a tool that is simpler, design with operations. And then sometimes we think about just the core process, and we forget about the exceptions and issue resolution. And I see, that's another topic for 30 minutes, right? I mean, it's because of that, then just destroy value. And that has an impact that usually companies don't measure and don't see, right? But so that would be my advice.
Carlos, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this episode of Frontline Innovators. Thank you so much for joining me today. Best of luck in all of your new endeavors. I do think we're going to have you come back sometime in 2026 so you can give us some updates on all the innovations that you're bringing to the market with all of your vast experience. And I thank you very much for joining me today on the show.
It will be a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thanks for listening to Frontline Innovators. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And remember, when we put people at the center of digital transformation, frontline workers thrive and organizations succeed. This podcast is brought to you by Skillful, helping frontline teams adopt the technology they need to work smarter, safer, and with confidence.